Well, hello and welcome to Outdoor Oklahoma. I'm Todd Craighead, and today I'm joined by my favorite wildlife diversity biologist, Melinda Hickman. Now, Melinda, for a few years now, you've been very involved in the development of the Great Plains Trail of Oklahoma.
That's correct. 7 years in the making. And the Great Plains Trail of Oklahoma is made up of 13 loops, and they're driving loops, they're road-based loops. And this is part of western Oklahoma, west of Highway 81 through the Panhandle. And the point of the loops is to get folks into the areas where they have a really good opportunity of seeing wildlife. And each of the loops has a birding route and one-day outings, so it's all there for them.
That's great. You know, we have 13, lucky 13.
Lucky 13.
And today we're going to actually take an in-depth look at two of those loops out in the Panhandle.
We are. We're going to be looking at the High Plains Loop and the Playa Lakes Loop, both of which are in the Panhandle. And for some reason, people think the area is just flat, that there's nothing to see. Well, they're wrong. There's a lot to see.
Well, I'm excited to see it myself. We've got some video today from one of our producers, Steve Weber, who visited both those loops, took his camera along, and we just happen to have the video.
Let's take a look at it.
You know, I think people are going to see this and say, that's the Panhandle?
I know. You know, they expect flat and nothing very pretty or unusual about it, but it's full of unexpected, because in addition to areas like this, which is, you know, the sage, sandbrush, prairie look about it, you can see there are trees there along the creeks. And where the trees are, that's where you're going to have a lot of wildlife. They serve like little oases. But we can't forget the human aspect of this, the agricultural part. There is surface water actually in the Panhandle as well, which will offer us a lot of views of wildlife. And again, where there are trees, there's going to be wildlife. But unfortunately, a lot of things from the people perspective have changed in that area. We do have, obviously, wheat and cattle grazing, but homesteads that have been left to weather and Mother Nature. But those actually serve a purpose as well. Wherever you find those old houses that are falling apart and the trees, that's where you're going to find barn swallows using the houses, just flying in and out.
Sure.
Lots. And of course the mammals, we can't forget, I kind of focus on birds, but can't forget the mammals. Wherever there's water, there's going to be crawdads and fish, and looks like, I think raccoon there is interested in maybe some crawdads.
Probably.
Right there. But again, this is not what you expect to see in the Panhandle. You expect nothing much, just flatness, but there is a lot to see. You've
gone to a lot of trouble to determine spots along the trail so that it provides a tremendous amount of diversity for the participants.
Right, and again, to get them to places where they have a really good chance of seeing wildlife. I love the cliff swallows. The cliff swallows, in addition to their beauty and obviously their engineering feats of building here with their amazing mud urn-shaped homes or nests, is that up until 10 years ago, we hardly ever had cliff swallows in Oklahoma.
Oh, really?
But they have expanded into our state, and they're very dependent on the concrete bridges, particularly the newer ones. And so an example of how wildlife will adapt to people and our structures, new and old.
Well, that's neat. These trails are just an exciting venture for anyone. These are places I've probably been to. Many folks have been to western Oklahoma, and yet it's like discovering a whole new Oklahoma all over again.
Well, it is, and the nice thing about the trail, the information, is that it's all there for you. You don't have to worry that if you get on this road, it's going to take you to a dead end. Those areas are well signed for you to maneuver, and you get off the beaten path, get off the highway. But of course, you want to stay on the hard tops too and come into our small towns.
Sure.
Again, this is where checking out the road map and the information will be helpful, because our small towns, the cafes are wonderful. great food, but their hours might be different than what you're used to. And sometimes there are service stations and sometimes they're not. So the roadmap will help you plan for that kind of information.
There's an old friend.
And you know, there are the typical general kinds of species such as your quail and turkey and white-tailed deer, but also in the Panhandle we have mule deer.
Oh, man.
And then people forget that fish can be a watchable wildlife too.
Sure.
The carp spawning there at Lake Evans Chambers.
Well, Melinda, who would think that fish would be a watchable wildlife?
I know, but you know, at certain times of the year, like spawning time, they're pretty obvious, aren't they?
You bet. Now, when we're talking about these different loops around the state, there are certainly probably certain times of the year you would recommend people enjoy them.
Well, absolutely, and especially these two loops that we're talking about, would highly recommend that they be traveled in May and June, such as you could see carp spawning, but also that's going to be a very active time for birds. You know, they're nesting at that time. And then again, I would recommend the October, November time where those native grasses are changing into that dormancy of the golden colors, maroon colors. Is also a fabulous time to be up there.
You bet. And I know you spend a lot of time up there that time of year because you're involved in doing some birding surveys, even on some of those very same roads that are on the loop, right?
Exactly. We've been doing those surveys for several years now, and in fact that helped us lay out the loops in that particular area because we knew that the bird watching in particular was very good on these particular survey routes.
Well, that's neat. We're now going to join up with one of Melinda's counterparts, Mark Howry, which is also a wildlife diversity biologist with the department, and he's going to tell us about some of those birding surveys in the spring.
I'm taking part in a bird survey that the Wildlife Diversity Program has been doing in the Panhandle the last 4 years. The purpose of this survey is to help us get a better handle on the distribution of a number of bird species, the relative abundance of each of them, and also the habitats that these birds are associated with. We run the survey in May each year. That's a time of year when birds are singing and very active, so we can get a good representation of the breeding or nesting birds here, especially the songbirds. And we run the survey during the morning hours, because by and large the morning is the peak activity time for birds. We start the surveys about 15 minutes before sunrise, and we will run till about 10:30, and usually after 10:30 bird activity drops off. However, if we get lucky and we get a cloudy day or a cool day, we may be able to extend that to 11 or 11:30. But the morning is the window of time that we're really shooting for. What we do is we conduct a series of 5-minute point counts. That's where we go to a station and we record every bird that we see or hear in a 5-minute period of time. And these stations are placed along county roads throughout Beaver, Texas, and Cimarron counties at half-mile intervals. That way, we're not covering every section of road, but we're getting a representation of each of those 3 counties, and we can usually cover anywhere from 26 to 30 point counts in a morning.